This is the EMEET StreamCam One Gen 2. So I'm gonna unbox it quickly and then talk through the specs. So this is what comes in the box. So the camera, a pouch, a user manual, a safety guide, a sticker, a USB-C to USB-C cable, and an adapter, which I think is a USB-C to USB-A adapter, and a windscreen for the microphone. And then on this side of the box, this is just tells you a little bit information about what can be done with this camera in terms of streaming and so on. And here you have a brief overview of the specs. Nothing on this side. So this is the patch that it comes in. This is the user manual, the safety guide, and a sticker. So I assume the use for these stickers is that you would put one sticker on the camera and one sticker on the wireless microphone, and then on the second camera, on the third camera, and so on. So you can match up your cameras with each wireless microphone that can be detached, and you know which number refers to which camera and which microphone, so that when you're managing these cameras from the remote application, you know which one is which if you want to physically relocate the camera or the microphone. And there you have the user manual as well. So windscreen for the external wireless microphone, USB-C to USB-C cable with the USB-C to USB-A port type adapter. And here you have the camera itself. So on the bottom you have the 1/4" 20, and on the back there's a slot for a microSD card, and the maximum microSD card that you can use there is 256 gigabytes. And then you have a USB-C port and a microphone port. So this camera has a microphone port here, which you can insert your own microphone, but then it also has this wireless microphone, which, so it has this wireless microphone that attaches to the top like this. It's magnetic, and it also has a clip here, so you can attach it to clothes or whatever, and then just walk around with it, and it will pick it up within a reasonable distance. And aside from that, it also comes with 2 built-in microphones, which I assume are somewhere there. So you don't necessarily need to use the wireless microphone, and you don't even need to use the microphone port on the back. And there's one button on the back which can be customized, but essentially you can use that to switch it on or switch it off or start the streaming. Now, another thing that I saw on the spec sheet of this camera is that you can use the USB-C port with an Ethernet adapter, and you can also use that with power over Ethernet. So you can charge it and use an Ethernet cable on the USB-C port. So in terms of its spec, it weighs 265 grams, and its dimensions are 9.6 centimeters by 7.8 centimeters with the height, and then in terms of the width is 5.9 centimeters. And it has a 1/4" 20 on the bottom, so you can attach it to any tripod or plates or super clamps if you want to attach this camera anywhere. And the way this camera works is by connecting it wirelessly to a software application. So you can install the app on your phone or on a Windows machine, and the application is available on Windows as well as Android and iOS. The battery life is 8 hours, although I haven't tested. You can stream with this camera, and you can also record to the microSD card, and you can do both simultaneously, and you can use an external microphone, and you can use the wireless mic. So depending on how many features you're using, then I guess the battery life would vary, but according to the spec, the battery lasts 8 hours. So in terms of the live streaming, you can do 1080p at 30 frames per second with H.264 over RTMP, and similar spec for the recording. So you can do 1080p, 30 frames per second, MP4 recording, H.264 to a file on the microSD card, which can go up to 256 gigabytes. So you can't insert a 1 terabyte microSD card in here. The lens on this camera is a fixed focus lens, but that shouldn't really be an issue because it's a wide angle lens. So it has a diagonal angle of view of 90 degrees, which is the equivalent of around 11 millimeters on a Micro Four Third type camera, just to give you a grasp of what it is, or wider than a 24 millimeter focal length on a full frame camera. So the type of lenses that you typically get on phones are around 12 millimeter Micro Four Third equivalent or 24 millimeter full frame equivalent. So this is wider than that, which is really good because if you want to use this camera to record sports, then you want a wide angle lens which will allow you to put it anywhere and still capture the action. And in terms of the live streaming, it has two settings for RTMP streaming. One is 3.5 megabits per second, which is for the high definition 1080p, and one is 1.5 megabits per second for standard definition, which would be lower quality. So it depends on what bandwidth you have available on the internet connection that you're using. Then you can choose which option you want to go for. And you don't necessarily need to use it for live streaming. You could just use it to do the recording on a microSD card. Set up lots of these cameras around the sports court, whether it's a tennis court or a basketball court, and then record them all to a microSD card, and then do the edits afterwards in post-processing. And if you want, you can stream and save it at the same time. And what that lets you do is essentially make sure that if your internet connection or Wi-Fi connection isn't good and the stream drops out, you always have the video recorded to a microSD card, so you know you have the decent quality video recorded somewhere which you can use later. Now, this camera, you have the option to buy it in a few different bundles, and some of the bundles come with tripods. So this is one of the smaller tripods. It's called TD303 EMEET tripod. So this is more like a, I guess, a tabletop tripod. Okay, so this is a tiny tripod and has a 1/4 inch screw, and it should be possible to push this up. Okay, so this also works like a selfie stick type of tripod. So you could mount it, or you could, I guess, use it as a selfie stick, but the top part doesn't actually move, so you don't have a ball head. So if you want to use it as a selfie stick, that might not be the best option. But if you want to just have it on a table and then lift it somewhat, then you have the option to do that this way. Or you can have it further down and just have it a little bit more secure. But the nice thing about this is that it's really light and small, so if you want to carry it around in your bag, that's quite easy to do. If you put it next to the camera here, you can see how small it is, and you can screw it to the bottom of the camera this way and then have it sit. Okay, so you actually have to raise it because this wouldn't sit. The feet of the tripod are higher up, so you do have to raise this up to a certain level before you can actually. Okay, so this is the minimum, I guess, that you can use it this way. So raise it this much and then have it on a table somewhere. So this is one of the tripods that you can get. Now this is another tripod that you can also get with one of the bundles. And this is a bigger tripod. And this gives you the spec here in terms of the height that it supports. So length 65 millimeter. Although I'm not sure whether that refers to centimeters or millimeters. Okay, length 65 millimeters, width 53 millimeters, height 282 millimeters, so that's 28.2 centimeters. So almost 30 centimeters in height. And weight is 288 grams, so almost 300 grams, and the max load is 2 kg, which is not really a problem because this camera essentially weighs less than 300 grams. So if you look at this tripod. This one has a plate, so it can come off, and it also seems to have a cold shoe on this side, and another 1/4" 20 on this side, and it has a ball head, so another 1/4" 20 there, and has these flexible type of legs, so if you want to lock it onto something, then you can do that. And I guess this is a better option to use for vlogging, if you wanted to use it for vlogging, although I don't think this camera is particularly good for vlogging because it doesn't have stabilization, so it's better to have it at a fixed point. And the other thing about this is that you seem to be able to change it to a phone holder. So I think you have to unscrew it. Let me just have to tighten this and then unscrew it and then screw it in the opposite direction. And here you have a phone holder, so you can actually put a phone and use this tripod with a phone instead of this camera. So if you were only using one camera, then you could just use your phone, I guess, you know, with this tripod, and you wouldn't need an app or anything like that. But the advantage of having these type of cameras is that you have 3 of them set up, for example, around the basketball court, and then you can record the action with them. And another thing I like about this tripod is it does have a small hole here which you can put a strap in. And one of the reasons I like that is because typically I would have a power bank of some sort connected to tripods, and you seem to be able to take off the whole head as well. So if you wanted, you could take off the whole head and just mount the camera here. And since these legs are flexible, you could orient it in any direction that you wanted. So you don't necessarily need to use a head if you don't think you need it and you just want a smaller package. And then this is the bigger tripod, which is called a professional tripod. And again, you can buy this as well with the, I think it comes with the ultimate bundle, or you can buy it on its own as well from EMEET. So this tripod comes with this bag. If I open the bag here, you can see that this is actually a heavy tripod, and the bag itself also has some padding. Okay, so it comes with a little instruction and an Allen key, or hex key if you want to call it that. And it has a ball head, and this is interesting because, let me see if I can free this. And I want to see how much force it requires. So if you free this, so this can rotate like a fluid head. It's actually a smooth motion. So if you did mount the camera on this, you could have it loose and then move it like a video head. The ball head is a normal ball head, so more like a photography ball head, but the panning action that you can get with this is fluid. So you can get a fluid motion with this to a certain extent, as long as it's stable where it is in terms of the tripod itself. But I have to say that the tripod is heavy, so it seems to be like a metal tripod, so it's not carbon fiber or anything like that. And it does fold away quite nicely into a small package, but it's still quite heavy. The feet are these type of feet, and then you have the locking mechanism. So on the bottom here you have this option to hang something, so you can hang your bag or something heavy to keep the tripod in place, particularly if you want to pan it, you want it to be heavy. And also if you have it in a sport environment, if it gets hit by a ball or by an athlete, then you don't want it to fall over easily. And if you look at the legs here, you have this locking mechanism, which is quite common among all the tripods in terms of how wide you want the feet to be when you're locking them. So I'm going to connect the camera and then go on the app and continue from there. I've plugged in the camera to the USB-C to charge it, and here you can see the LEDs which indicate it's been charged, and then I guess once it's fully charged you would have all the LEDs be on, and that's the battery indicator. But one thing I wanted to mention, which I saw in the manual, is that when you're using the USB-C port to charge it, it will need 5 volts at up to 2 amps in order to charge. So I guess if you have a lower current, then it would take longer to charge. But if you want to just supply power externally and you're not relying on the battery of the camera itself to run, so if you connect a power bank or something to it and just leave it there, you only need 5 volts at 1 amp. So that means the power consumption of this camera is really low, which means it can run for a long time. And considering it also has built-in batteries, I think it's safe to say that it will work for a full day of whatever you need if you also have a power bank with it. So 8 hours is how much the battery should last on this camera. And then if you have a power bank, it would go above that. So you probably wouldn't need more than that in a single day. And according to the manual, it takes 3 to 4 hours to charge the camera, and it uses Bluetooth version 5, and the Bluetooth range is 20 meters in an open environment. So I suspect the Bluetooth connection might be used for either controlling the camera or also for the microphone itself, the external microphone that's on the camera. So another thing worth mentioning about this external microphone is that this microphone also has a battery inside it, and when you connect it to the top of the camera, that will also charge. So to get everything up and running, I will install the app on a smartphone or on a computer and then go from there. So you just need to have network connection on the device that you're using, whether it's a computer, a Windows machine, or an Android or an iOS machine, and then go from there. And here you can see it actually gives you the guidance for that. So it says, please keep these devices close enough when connecting. So that's the router, which your computer would be connected to, or your smartphone, and the camera, which would connect to your phone. So I'm not sure how the communication works, whether the camera will do some communication with the phone and some communication directly with the router to connect to internet and stream, or whether everything will actually go through the phone. But my suspicion is that you use the phone to configure the camera, but after that it's the camera itself that will start to stream through the router directly, because it wouldn't make any sense to waste battery on the phone and also create another bottleneck in the streaming process. So the phone app should probably only be used for the control aspect of this device. So I've downloaded the Windows version of EMEET Stream, and I'm going to install it. It asks me permission for the installation file, and then the language, and I accept the agreement without reading it, and then I install it, and I also create a desktop shortcut, and then install again, and it's finished now. So I'm going to press finish, which should start the application. And the software application comes with a bunch of guides in terms of how to use the application, add different cameras, and how to do the live streaming and so on. And there's a similar process on the phone application as well. So when you start the application for the first time, it gives you these guide information boxes about where each functionality is and what it does. So you can go through those, and that pretty much covers all the functionality that the application provides and you need to use. So I'm going to download the app for Android, and then click on install on Google Play. And the installation has finished, so I'm going to press open. And just like the
desktop application, it also has all these guides here on the Android app. So I'm not going to go through all the steps of installing and configuring, but everything is straightforward on the mobile app as well. You add a camera and then you can start streaming or recording. And one of the things that I didn't mention previously was that you can actually record to the phone as well as to the SD card. So you have two options for recording the video footage in addition to streaming it. You can record on the phone or you can record on the microSD card, which is on the camera itself. So there you can see that the app has picked up the signal from the camera. And here you can just see some different options that you have in terms of configuring the device and the streaming and the recording and so on. I mean, you can go through these yourself. These are quite straightforward. But I mean, the advantages of these cameras is that they're really small and compact, and you get a few of them, and you can have a relatively complex setup in a small and easy to use system. But what you don't get with these type of cameras is the compatibility with other devices. For example, they're not like a big box camera which has lots of quarter-inch 20s on it, lots of cold shoes or HDMI out, NDI, and those kind of features. So it's specific to this ecosystem. But the advantage is that it's smaller, it's lighter, and it's easier to use.
And you can have material as in text or images or whatever you want to overlay on the picture, or you can have picture-in-picture camera. So if you're using two cameras, then that's something you can do. And then you can control the audio, switch it off, and you have settings for the SD card. You have zoom and transitions. I'm gonna set my video to high latency because I usually use Wi-Fi, or I might be using 4G or 5G networks, which are unreliable.
Anyway, let me know if you have any questions about these cameras or how to operate them, or about the software or the microphones or anything like that. And one reminder I would also want to mention is that you make sure to upgrade the firmware both on the camera and on the microphones as well. So the two have to be upgraded separately. So there's two different firmware updates for each of them. And I think the firmware update for the microphones actually happen over Bluetooth. So you need to have access to both. So that's just to make sure that you have the latest firmware, and if there's any bug fixes, it's included on the camera and the microphone that you're using, as well as any new features have been implemented on your camera. Anyway, let me know if you have any questions about the camera, and if you want me to go into more details about any aspect of the camera and the software